Okay, so welcome to the third screencast for Chapter 8. In this screencast, we're going to be talking about cost. All right, so we have a lot of different costs that we consider as economists when we're thinking about how firms make decisions. We have a lot of, especially when we're thinking about firms making decisions in the short run, so it can get a little complicated. There's lots of abbreviations, so I'm going to try to go slow, and then I'm encourage you to rewatch this if it goes by too fast to make sure you're getting down what all the different costs are. Okay, so the first thing that we want to talk about are variable costs. So these are costs that are directly related with the rate of output. So workers' wages, electric bill, food ingredients. These are costs that if I buy more of an input, they can get bigger or smaller. I can hire more people today, less people tomorrow. I can use more ingredients today, less ingredients tomorrow. I can vary how much of that input I use. It's a variable input, so its cost is variable, maybe is the way to think of it, all right? The other is a fixed cost. So these are costs that don't vary much with the amount of output I produce, and they're kind of hard to change in the short run. So building a warehouse, building a factory, renting a building, buying insurance, buying big machines that make whatever it is I make, buying garbage trucks, the example from the last screencast. Those things are big kind of fixed cost, all right? And then total cost is just the sum of your variable cost and your fixed costs, right? And the key here is going to be that your variable cost, you can change it in the short run, right? You can use less ingredients, more ingredients. You can change that quickly, more quickly. With the fixed cost, you only maybe change those things every 6 months or every year or whatever. It's hard to change them quickly in the short run. So what is then average total cost? All right, the average total cost. So remember, total cost was just fixed cost plus variable cost. So the average total cost is just your total cost divided by the number of units that you produce. So divided by Q. All right, so it's fixed cost plus variable cost divided by Q, all right? Or just total cost, TC, divided by Q, all right? Analogously, average variable cost is just your variable cost divided by Q, and average fixed cost is just your fixed cost divided by Q, all right? So those are, so you build a bunch of stuff, you build 10 computers to sell. Your total cost is just how much did it cost you to build those 10 computers divided by 10, right? Your variable cost is maybe you hired a bunch of people to help you build it. So it's how much did it cost to hire those people divided by Q, divided by the 10 computers. Average fixed cost is you had machines that you used to build the computers. How much did those cost divided by the total amount Q? So it's average. It's the total divided by the total number of units. All right. Next is marginal cost. All right. So marginal cost is going to be the cost of adding one more. All right. So the increase in total cost that occurs from producing one more unit of output. So when I add the 11th computer, right, produce the 11th computer, how much did my total cost change? So you have a total cost, you build one more computer, what's that change in your total cost? That's what is called marginal cost, all right? So it's the change in the total cost divided by the change in the output, right? Notice, this was just the total cost divided by the output. Marginal cost is how much did my total cost change? Divide that by how much did my output change, all right? So here's what all of these different things look like in terms of equations. All right, if your brain remembers equations easier than those sentence descriptions. All right, so this is total cost, your total variable cost plus your total fixed cost. All right, so that's your total cost. The next was all of these average cost curves. So we have average total cost, which we can either talk about in terms of just take the total cost and divide by Q, all right? Or we can talk about the average fixed cost, which is the total fixed cost divided by Q, or the average variable cost, which is total variable cost divided by the quantity, all right? So notice that these three things have the same relationship that these three things have. Total cost equals total variable cost plus total fixed cost. Average total cost plus, average fixed cost plus average variable cost equals average total cost, because each one of these is just this divided by Q. So that relationship has to hold, all right? And then now we have marginal cost, which is the change in your total cost divided by the change in the quantity. And often we're just going to think about that as a change in quantity of when I produce one more. We're going to make it easy on us. Say, when I produce one more, how much did my total cost go up? All right. So, and that's what we say right here. We're going to set the change in quantity equal to 1. All right. So we're going to say when I increase quantity by 1, how much does my total cost change? And it makes the intuition a little more simple. So we're always going to decrease. The average fixed cost is always going to decrease as we produce more output. All right. This is called spreading overhead. All right. But notice that this is the relationship here. Average fixed cost equals total fixed cost divided by Q. Right. So the average fixed cost does not change as Q changes. So as we keep adding more to Q, the denominator gets bigger, but the numerator does not. All right, we're producing more quantity with the same amount of fixed cost. So that makes the total value of this thing, right, when the denominator goes up and the numerator stays the same in a fraction, it makes the total value of that expression go down. All right, so this chart shows us the relationship between all of these different costs. All right, I'm going to walk you through it. So when we go from 0 of a good to producing 10, our variable costs increase because we had to hire more workers, we had to have more ingredients or raw materials, whatever it was. Our variable inputs increase as Q increases, so our total variable costs have to increase. Notice that our total fixed cost will never increase. That's the definition of a fixed cost. It's a fixed input. It doesn't change with the quantity of the good that we're producing. So total fixed cost will stay the same. Total cost is just total variable cost plus total fixed cost. So 0 plus 100 is 100, 30 plus 130 is 130, all the way down. So notice we're always just adding the total variable cost to that same total fixed cost to get the total cost. All right. What is average variable cost? All right. Well, you take your total variable cost and you divide it by the quantity. So 0 divided by 0 is nothing. It doesn't exist. 30 divided by 10 is $3. So our average variable cost of producing 10 is $3. What's our average variable cost of producing 20? Well, our total variable cost is 50. We divide it by the amount we're producing, which is 20, so we get 250. Average variable cost of producing 30. All right, so we are producing, the total variable cost is 65 of producing 30. We divide it by 30, we get 217. And that's where average variable cost comes from. We just take the total divided by the quantity. Same thing for fixed cost. Notice, fixed cost is staying the same. So as we produce more, and we take 100 divided by 10, well, that's 10. Now 100 divided by 20, that's 5. 100 divided by 30, that's 3.333. So notice that as we add more quantity, the average fixed cost falls because we're producing more with that same amount of that fixed input. All right. The last of the average values is the average total cost. So that's just total cost divided by the quantity. So again, 100 divided by 0 doesn't exist, but now 100 divided by 10, 130 divided by 10 is 13. 150 divided by 20 is 750. So we just take the total cost and divide it by the quantity. Notice we could also find it by adding up the average variable cost and the average fixed cost. 3 plus 10 is 13. 250 plus 5 is 750. All right, so you can get the average total cost either by dividing total cost by Q or by adding up average variable cost and average fixed cost. You can get it either way. Now for the one that's a little trickier, and that's our marginal cost. So what we're looking at here is the total, the change in total variable cost divided by the change in quantity. All right. So as we go from 0 to 10, all right, total variable cost goes from 0 to 3. The change in quantity goes from 0, the change in total variable cost, where is it? Here. The change in total variable cost goes from 0 to 30. The change in the quantity goes from 0 to 10. So the quantity changes 10, the total variable cost changes 30. So 30 divided by 10 is 3. What about for the next one? So total variable cost goes from 3 to 50, 30 to 50. That's a change of 20, but we divide it by 10. All right, so 20 divided by 10 is 2. The change in total variable cost when we go from 50 to 65 is 15, but we divide it by 10, the change in quantity, so that's 150, all right, and so forth. And that's how you get the marginal cost of each additional amount of the quantity you want to produce.